This part of the family history starts from Austria and begins in Vienna with Karl Werzal. Karl was born November 1st, 1880, in the Oskardorf area of Vienna, Austria. He grew up in Vienna and in his early 20s fell in love with a woman from the village of Leben named Isabella Seiler. Karl was in his early 20s fell in love with Isabella, and although they weren't married, at the age of 22, Karl and Isabella, age 20, had a daughter, Amelie. Not long afterwards, Isabella became ill with a sickness that affected her lungs. The doctors recommended that Karl not get married to Isabella because of her illness. On April 13, 1905, Karl and Isabella had a second daughter, whom they named Isabel. A few months later, on September 10, 1905, Isabel Aloysia Seiler passed away, leaving Karl with two young daughters. Karl returned to Vienna, where in the next few months he met Josephine Schweiner, a young woman 20 years old who cared for Karl and was willing to take in his daughters as her own. On October 28, 1906, Karl and Josephine were married. Not long after, in August 1907, they had a daughter of their own, Irma. It was 10 years later, 1917, when Karl, 36, and Josephine, 30, had their last daughter, Anna, who was affectionately known as Tante Annie, or Aunt Annie, to many of Karl's descendants. Here is a note that Tante Annie, my grandmother's half-sister, wrote to my mother in the 1980s. It reads, "Karl Werzal was the name of my father. My father wanted to marry, but the doctor, after learning about my mother's health condition, advised against it. Please do not think badly of my father. Your mother was loved by my mother as if she had been her own child. Hopefully you understand me. Your mother was only 6 weeks old when her mother died." Karl and Josephine lived many years in Vienna, raising their family. Here's a photo of Josephine with her three daughters, Amelie, Irma, Isabel. And below is a photo taken circa 1923 of the extended family, and you can see on the right side Karl with Isabel to the left, Irma to the right, and seated is his wife Josephine with Annie at her feet. The daughters eventually left home, Isabel at the age of 18 to the United States, marrying Frank Hutter. Karl lived in an apartment at 18 Blumergasse, not far from the Prater, a famous park. When visiting in 2022, I stood in the doorway of the apartment that he had lived at for many years. His building was just 2 doors down from Blumergasse 24, a residence tied to the history of Vienna's Jewish community, and later memorialized for 46 Jewish residents deported and murdered from 1938 to 1944 during the Holocaust. Walking down the street, there was a plaque dedicated to the Jews who lived in the neighborhood who had been taken away and murdered by the Nazis. The large plaque reads, "In memory of the 46 Jewish women, men, and children who lived in this house and were deported and murdered by the Nazis." A smaller plaque commemorates individual people. Rudolf Klopfer, born 8/7/1822, deported in 1941 to Lodz, from there 1941 to Chelmo, murdered. How incredibly rough that time must have been for Karl, living under the occupation with your neighbors being deported and killed. In 1930, at the age of 50, Josephine passed away. Karl would, through the remainder of his 28 years, connect with his daughters as he grew old. Finally, at the age of 70 in 1958, Karl Werzal passed away. What a life he had lived.